We're delighted to be here tonight. Obviously, I'm Kate, and there's Sean popping up now. And we have been working on this project that's our passion, really, formally for gosh, almost 3 years to the day. And but it's been in the works, actually, in Sean's mind and many others for many years, right?
Yeah, I think really the first time we sort of started the Botanical Garden Committee, I was at Hoyt Arboretum and I had just moved back to Portland. Once you being born here, I couldn't stay away,
Mhm.
and realizing there was not a native plant garden of any size in the state, and so many of the things just weren't being done for our citizenry, that we started looking at land actually in 1998. I like to say that was when I was about 4 years old. And then I became involved in the Chinese garden, curating that, and sort of didn't want to get involved in another public garden for a while. And this just happened, and I think it's a really timely thing. There's so many needs in our region.
Yeah, especially through the pandemic, which is really, we started in January, that would be January 20, and the pandemic settled upon us. One thing that you may not know about me is that I'm a horticultural therapist as well. After I left academia, I decided to go into that career. So my love really is about working with people and plants, and this is truly a remarkable thing for me to be doing. So Sean and Sean found me, I guess, about 3 years ago, and we have two co-founders, Dan Pogast and Sean Hogan, and they had started working together, I guess, about 6 months or so before, or a year before I came on the scenes, and we've been working sort of quietly in the beginning, working on getting our 501(c)(3) and developing volunteers and starting such things as education. And I can see one of our volunteers is here actually tonight as well, from the education team. But most primarily, we've been working on land acquisition. And we'll talk to you a little bit about that tonight. It is not the easiest thing in the world to do, to find enough land to build a botanical garden in the heart of Portland. So we've spent probably 2.5 full years, and we've identified a couple of pieces of land that we're working on. And we have a great team of attorneys who are helping us, land use experts, an amazing team of people working on land acquisition that range from former EPA to former real estate lawyers and so on. So, but the mission, Sean, do you want to talk about your vision of this garden? It's different than what you might normally think of a botanical garden, I think.
Yeah, sure. I think from the highest vantage point, we're looking at a few things. One, socially, many of us in Portland think that we can really make a phone call and make something happen, but we realize we have a lot of our own population, whether it's socioeconomic, language, or what have you, that people don't necessarily feel that way. And there's, as I learned in curating the Chinese garden, there is nothing like the world of plants and our natural surroundings to bring everyone into one room. So that's part of it. We're also looking at very strong vocational training for people coming into both the botanical and the horticultural field. And there's also sort of almost an untapped resource, I think, especially here in Portland. And that is, we have a young, vibrant city. In recent years, people have really started looking to us as an example. And we now have to earn that trust. And part of that is making sure that our citizenry learns about and falls in love with the diverse natural surroundings around us, and then becomes active in wanting to preserve it. And that can be from, a kid seeing a Darlingtonia for the first time, or the geometry of a prickly pear, and as we all got hooked on it somehow. So there are a bunch of things that we want to roll into this to make sure that everybody gets a lot of exposure to this environment around us.
Mhm. And talk a little bit about why. What's the need for a botanical garden here in Portland?
Well, one, we don't have one. So there's that.
Minor detail.
Right. We are the only city of any size in the country without a major botanic garden. And it sort of pains me every day to think of, again, how many kids of all ages are not being exposed to the wonders of the world, and again, falling in love with it and wanting to become active in it. So that's the big picture, but there are so many other things also. For instance, the Port of Portland has been so helpful to us because they see something like this bringing a number of increase in visitorship to Portland with something like this, AK maybe even Singapore Botanic Garden. We would really like to see a major botanical sciences curriculum here in Portland. We don't have a Berkeley or any of the other schools that we need to be creating great scientists rather than having to import them. Research, we can be a hub for that. And we're also looking at, again, strong vocational training. So people can get into the horticulture field or the field botany field, or you name it, and go through an accredited program where they'll come out the other side being experts in their field. So pre-K, K through 12, both vocational and university track, and then partnering with a number of schools, both locally, Lewis and Clark, et cetera, but also a number of botanical gardens around the world in cross-training and information and genetics and the like.
Absolutely. And I think it might be important also to mention the relationship that we'll have with the other gardens here in Portland. And we intend to be more of a horticultural hub and bringing people into the city so that they can enjoy all of our gardens. We're not replacing it, obviously not replacing any gardens at all, but hopefully complementing. Sean, here's your slides.
Oh, of course, we have to have some visuals here. And I just thought I'd show a couple of native plants here. Well, everything is native someplace,
Yep.
But the idea here is to have a biogeographic garden. So we're looking at plant communities from all over the world, both inside up to 5 conservatories based in different parts of the world, from South Africa to all kinds of places, again, that we can participate in conservation, ex situ conservation programs, but also, again, make people just want to fall in love with the flora that we are surrounded by. So a lot of potential inside things here, except for Fremontodendron there, things that will really get people excited about what we can grow outside. So the idea is that we have these metaphorical, if not real, glass walls. And on the inside are things from rarefied climates that cannot grow outside here. On the outside are things from various ecotones that we can grow outside. Next here, we can just keep going. Of course, and I think for our group here, probably the largest single focus, well, for sure, the largest single focus for the garden will be in comparing and contrasting our local populations of plants and communities from throughout the state and throughout the West. So essentially, yes, we'll be able to look at the Garrigue and the Chaparral communities here and compare and contrast them with others around the world, but have populations of plants in as close as we can do to mimicking natural surroundings. So it's also a place we'll be growing these plants. So ex situ and genetic work can be done as well. So we'll have, I would say, qualities in this garden of, for instance, walking the world. So you can take a path between North America and Europe and South Africa and South America, et cetera. There's something that is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's going to be called Traversing Oregon. So not everybody can go hike to the top of the nearest mountain range, but we'll have essentially a trail that will take you from the redwoods through the Klamath Siskiyou, Rogue Valley, Cascade, Upper Sonoran, Great Basin, and then into the Rockies, the Wallowas, through all those plant communities, and maybe only in a few hundred feet. So a lot of fun to have there. Here's a population rhododendron occidentale with Arctostaphylos canescens here in Southern Oregon. Iris innominata with Ceanothus fumilis. Lewissia liana, sorry, that got out of focus. And one of my favorite habitats here along the Illinois River, again, in Josephine County. And it is amazing, as I'm sure all of you know, the number of people that don't know about so many of the amazing habitats that exist just within our state. They might have heard a little more about the gorge, about the, 1% of the Willamette Valley grasslands we have left, the vernal pools in St. Helens, well, that kind of thing. But very few people, for instance, know about the serpentine flora, and we'd really like to make that common knowledge. This is just in my own garden. Don't have enough acreage to have a completely native garden except for a few islands. So this is a mixture of Western things. We happen to specialize in Arctostaphylos. So everything from Arctostaphylos and Phlomis to Ceanothus and the like. So it's as if we just crash landed into the Mediterranean or something like that.
And if you haven't been to Sean's garden, that's quite a treat. And
And the other thing,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry,
No,
I was
no,
just going to
go
say
ahead.
that the use of natives in public landscaping, there has been sort of, I think, a trend in those of us that sort of nerd out in the minutia we're surrounded with if we just go out and look at it. But sometimes in especially our conservation world, when we translate that to horticulture, it's what sometimes I have called punitive gardening. And that is, we've been a very bad civilization and we should be punished, so let's plant natives. And it's not always the most inviting thing in the world. I'm thinking of UC Davis, for instance, with a native shrub about every 30 feet and a lot of wood chips. And so the idea here is to plant things in rich communities and allow ourselves even to work with color and foliage contrasts, but also plants, of course, that would occur together naturally and make really everyone think want to come to it as a warm and fuzzy spot.
So location. So the land acquisition process, as I mentioned, has been long and painful, especially through the COVID years when everything was done on Zoom. I think Sean and I collectively must have spent half of our lives on Zoom.
I think so.
But many thanks to the Port of Portland for their GIS services and helping us try to locate a chunk of land within the city, and for Clean Water Services out in Washington County. So we're looking at two sites currently. The former, well, it's actually a current golf course, MERIWETHER National Golf Club out in Hillsborough, which is Clean Water Services is interested in partnering with us on so that they can use the wetlands. And McCormick and Baxter, which is a former Superfund site just below the University of Portland down on the Willamette River, which is certainly got its bureaucracy, including just about, the EPA and the Oregon DEQ, and as Sean likes to say, the DMV, though not really.
Everybody's there.
Everybody seems to have a finger in that particular pie, and you can see this is the site right here. So it's
the Fault Escarpment Bluff here, and Willamette Boulevard, as you can see along St. John's.
Yeah, there's Willamette Boulevard, right, and the railroad track that comes across the commuter line. And it's one of the things that, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, sorry. One of the beautiful things about this site is that, of course, it has a lot of history, some of it not so great, but a lot of it really good. We have John Olmsted's String of Pearls along the top here. We also have these fault escarpment bluffs that have had some amazing flora on them, historic collections of Ceanothus cuneatus for example. So we have a little California floristic province-y area there that we are really set upon restoring.
I got pictures somewhere.
Yeah, there's the site. So it's had a rough go of it, but
Yep, this is it right here. Here's the freight line, here's the commuter line, and there's the river. This is actually taken from up the University of Portland, looking down at the site.
So of course, the wonderful thing about having our urban growth boundaries is that we haven't spread into everything possible. The downside is that 50 or 100 acres are not an easy thing to find.
No. And I think the one when we first went down to look at this site, which is this picture on the right here, I think it was, I don't know, it was in like November of two and a half years ago, maybe something like that. And it was just phenomenal being able to walk right down to the Willamette. And granted, the land has been badly damaged, and even the river has been badly damaged, but it's all been mitigated and cleaned up and capped. And but to be able to stand right at the edge of the river and then turn around and see a rainbow, we thought perhaps we'd found the right place, right?
We saw unicorns also that day.
So we have many facilities that we're thinking of in addition to the glass conservatories that we're depending on how much land we actually end up being able to acquire. Originally our sites were set on 80 to 100 acres, and we have sort of gradually realized that there's not that kind of land available. So we're looking at smaller acreage, and it turns out that this particular piece of land may be shared with a partner in order to drive the economic engine of the land, in order to allow us to be there. But it may end up being 35 acres, something like that. But hopefully we'll have room for 5 glass houses plus all kinds of the usual visitor amenities and shops and multi-purpose conference rooms and classroom space. And we're hoping that we'll become a true horticultural hub and have such organizations like the Hardy Plant Society or the Native Plant organizations and botanical artists of Oregon. All these people come to the garden to be able to share in the space, and as well as access was something that we felt is incredibly important to this. Wherever we put our garden is access for people that need to have access to nature. So an access will be through foot, by boat, hopefully, hopefully trolley, possibly train. So and the Frog Ferry, maybe, if they manage to make that happen. And here is the bluffs that Sean was talking about earlier, owned by the city of Portland, I believe, right?
Mostly, yeah. Some by the University of Portland, who have been very interested in so far in partnering with the restoration.
So restoring these bluffs would add something like 12 more acres to the site. So the multi-purpose spaces that I was referring to, as well as rentals and musical events, as well, art exhibitions, multicultural events. And here's an overview. This is the St. John's neighborhood, and here's the site right in here. Oops, not that here, this right here. And you may know of Willamette Cove, which is just on the other side of the railroad tracks here, that's owned by Metro. And we have been talking with Metro about the possibility of having compatible visions for Willamette Cove if we end up being on this piece of property. The current land ownership, you can see how much land Metro actually owns. It's all that green right around it. So we've actually did a presentation to Metro quite recently. I think they were impressed to see how much land they owned right around the land that we were interested in. This is a concept drawing of the proposed layout. And you see that big yellow area in the middle here is an area that is capped. It's the most damaged area of the land that the EPA is capped. And we wouldn't be able to build anything on it. No construction, no pilings, no large trees. But we feel that it could be, unless we have a very, very creative engineering firm, and certainly we have architects and place landscape architecture, which did this concept drawing. I don't know, Sean refers to the, what do you call them? The bouncy conservatories.
Oh, right, unless we could put bouncy conservatories on the cap, where no buildings on
No,
it,
but
but it's a lot of land, and it could be, of course, event space, but also a pretty interesting meadow
mhm,
also, which is important in and of itself. And some of these green areas around also were re-vegged 20 years ago or so. And I was driving by, I think, almost 4 years ago, and there were these beautiful orange colors along the river there. And I thought, what on earth could that be? It was summer. And I realized later that they've been irrigating the re-veg area for a while, and they turned off to establish. So they turned off the irrigation, and the red cedars died in about 10 minutes. Most of the Douglas firs died about 20 minutes later. But the Quercus garryana, there's some groves of Willamette Valley ponderosa with good provenance, and they are fine and growing very nicely. But what had seeded everywhere are the madrones, and there are just some beautiful spots that really put up a sign and bring people in. They're ready for action even now. So that's kind of a nice thing.
Yep. And here's Meriwether Golf Course, which some of you may know, out in Hillsborough. And currently we're working with Clean Water Services. They're very interested in purchasing the property because they have a treatment plant right across the Tualatin River from the golf course, and they use the wetlands. They restore the wetlands and use it as a tertiary form of water treatment. They've been looking at this site for a long time, but they'd given up on it until we came into the picture. And it would be a beautiful partnership if we could use the uplands and they could use the wetlands. And we wouldn't be able to use it as a botanical garden because it's a zoned agricultural. So we'd be probably putting in some sort of arboretum or demonstration garden, propagation
Gardens.
Facilities. Yeah.
There's also some amazing groves of
Mm.
oaks, and again, Willamette Valley ponderosa. So upland, oak woodland and prairie conservation or preservation would be a major activity there. And also as a teaching place, one of the things that really has come into view is that, for instance, in the horticulture world, one, of course, we have a huge nursery industry primarily focused on export to the East Coast, but certainly growing in climate adapted, both native and non-native plants here. But we also have a lot of people working in maintenance, and we are asking a lot of people from so many communities in Portland to help build this. So it's not something that we just sort of hand over, say, here it is, it's finished. But one of the things we'd like to do here is have an accredited vocational school. We intend to have the best gardening school in the country, and that sounds a little braggartly, but honestly, it's not saying much. But we really do want to have it and also in multiple languages. And as it comes to be, who takes care of our gardens, whether it's industrial property or residential or the grocery store, 98% people from Central America or Mexico. And there is very, very little training. And it's not as if there can just be a pamphlet in Spanish or a native language. And so we really want to create a place that people can learn in such a way that they become geeks like the rest of us and actually have the will and the free time to do things like join the Native Plant Society and go to Hardy Plant Society shows and really become experts in the field. So that's something that is really near and dear to the vocational sections I talked about a little bit ago.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful piece of property. Oh, a lot of Meriwether maps here. So we have many supporters across across the city and the state, but also all over the world, right? Sean's got a lot of friends in a lot of places. They've all been waiting for him to build this botanical garden. So stakeholders, we're actually just beginning a initiative, I guess, really to start building our stakeholders, and within that also to be able to reach out to the diverse communities that we have here in Portland. Because really this is about the people of Portland helping to visualize what it is they need in their city. So the road ahead, well, it's long and complicated. So I think we have a lot to do before we actually open the door, but fundraising is something that we're just beginning to jump into. We've got a business plan, we'll have a strategic plan, and we've got a lot of architects and landscape architects that are really, really interested in working with us. So very much looking forward to that. We're having conversations with Portland Bureau of Transportation, PBOT. Yep. The budget, just in case, for those that are interested, our budget's a little more than $50,000 a year right now. We have currently 2 paid staff, but we pay a lot of subcontractors or independent contractors, I guess, but we have a huge number of volunteers that have just give of their time and experience, and we could not exist without our volunteers. Truly amazing. So we're hoping, if we get these pieces of land, or even one piece of land this year, we will be able to break ground on phase 1 construction by 2026. There's, as I say, a lot of work to do in between, a lot of money to raise, a lot of permits, but we have a lot of revenues as well that we're hoping to be able to initiate. So that's sort of the general overview, and we'd be happy to take questions, I think, now. Here's our information. If you want to go to our website, portlandbg.org, you can sign up for a newsletter there if you scroll all the way to the bottom. It's not on any sort of particular schedule at the moment, but maybe every other month or so. And there's my contact information and Sean's as well.
And I just noticed here, I don't know how long this page has been like this, but I'm Sean at Sisters. I'm a com, not a
oh,
word.
geez, you're
So,
a com. Yes,
If
indeed.
anybody wants to drop me a note, just put a com on there.
I think it tends to, yeah. Sorry, we'll fix that immediately. So maybe we could take some questions now. My guess is there are some.
This is Willow Elliott. I was just gonna read there were a couple of chat questions, just 2. One you already answered, more or less. How many acres are you going to need? You would like to have 100, but you got 35 in the city, and then you've got the 300 out in Hillsborough. So I hope that answered your question, Anne. And then Nick Appleman would like to know what is concerning the diversity that you mentioned. How can you involve the former and present Black community and maybe some of the Native American community?
Well, we want everybody to be involved, of course. When just getting this going, what do we do first? I just call my friends. And so right now our committees are almost entirely people that are of all kinds of backgrounds, including the African American community, but are first and foremost plant geeks. And the next stage is to, and as we're beginning to do now, reach out to more formal, both community and cultural groups, really to really have a more formal relationship and get a lot more input when we have enough information to give them. Becoming involved with the tribes is going to be super important. Again, so far, only one-on-one conversations. We've really been waiting to have our street address before jumping in. But I think the history of this site, very much like the one on where I am on Savi Island, extremely rich. I mean, people have been living on this site undoubtedly before it was a creosote plant, especially, for 15,000 years or more. And the things that have gone on here, I think I could say that Burning Man was not started in Nevada 30 years ago. I think it was started on Savi Island with all the tribes that would come and trade from far and wide. And I happen to have a grandfather who was Miwok and Nez Perce, and went to school. He graduated here and then became a ranger in Yosemite. And he still had gossip from things that would, actual gossip from families and all of that. And so in a somewhat bigger picture still, we'd like the history and everybody's involvement in the site not to be sort of, that was black and white and a long time ago and a little out of focus, and now it's color. But we'd like to have, especially the native history of the site, in color from day one. And that it's going to take some doing, but it's one of the most just the most exciting aspects of the whole thing. I don't know if that's a very general answer, but I hope that's a start.
Sure thing. And then Robin she's put a question in. Can you expand on the educational training and schooling aspect? Maybe she's wondering about certifications. Are you able to give certifications? What you're thinking of through the?
We want,
horticulture?
there are various associations, but what we want to have is a very, very strongly accredited program, both botanical and horticultural and vocational. So, we're not talking homespun here, but we are talking a lot of expertise that has not been available locally. As any of you who've opened a garden book, often you're finding British selections of plants or plant care for gardens in New Jersey rather than for our part of the world. So we want to make this a strong regional center, and part of that is really putting out and teaching people the best information available. And that's going to also include a lot of included actually in the biogeographical areas of the gardens, a lot of testing of new plants or plants that have been raised from seed or cuttings in the wild, and testing them for use in public landscapes, and also just simply climate resilient and climate adapted plants, and getting that palette in people's minds. They can still have their hydrangeas, but plant those in one spot and then plant more manzanitas.
How about you, Kate, with your teaching background? Do you want to get back into teaching, or do you want to
No,
train?
no.
You want to train other people how?
I'm too old. No, I'm just kidding. No, I don't want to teach, but I do. I come from. Also, I was the dean of a couple of different colleges, so I have a real background in developing programs. And we have a terrific education director, Michael Hyde, who's come to us. He's been working with us for, almost a year now, and coming up with, the educational opportunities are numerous and almost unlimited, running between the public schools, especially in parts of Portland that don't have much access to nature, through colleges, through vocational training, and we want to be able to bring our education mobily through some sort of a mobile situation, a bus or a van, the terrarium on wheels or whatever, to parts of Oregon that don't have access, again, to a botanical garden, for instance. I mean, we can serve the state in that way. So, the sort of like the world's our oyster. It just takes time and good people to accomplish it all.
And the tree walks so far.
Oh, I forgot about the tree walks. Yeah.
That's been really successful.
Yeah. We had a program this summer that Michael spearheaded that we hired a couple of great instructors, and they did, it didn't cost anything to participate. We had a cap on the number of people that could take it. I think it was four different days that we did it over the summer. So it was very successful. So we'll be doing that. In fact, we're thinking about developing, there's a perfect audience for it. We're developing a program. We were given a grant or a donation by people that were earmarking their donation for use in native plants, whatever we felt was appropriate. And I think that what we're going to do is develop curriculum around plant walks for native plants in particular. So that's probably the first thing we'll be working on this year. Do you have more questions around that?
Wow. All of a
It's a lot.
sudden, there's a lot of questions. So let's see. A couple of people want to know about you'd be selling some plants. That would be part of your shop.
And at MERIWETHER in particular, we'll have,
Mhm.
in fact, because of the agricultural zoning, we would be required to sell plants.
Mhm.
But we
And-
would, of course, we'll sell plants. We'll sell plants, absolutely.
I missed one by Carolyn. She wanted to know if you'd been to the Glenstone Garden in Potomac, Maryland, 230 acres.
I haven't.
No,
Not ever even heard of that. Thanks, Carolyn. Sounds.
We'll have to look it up. Yeah.
this
Huh.
does bring a quick, and this has been one of the most oft asked questions right after, where's it going to be? And that is about access. And, you know, we've of course said that we want everybody to come to this garden, but also we want everybody to be able to afford to come to the garden. So as sort of a deal with ourselves, we want to have part of the site open at all times so people can come and wander. Then, of course, other areas would have to be gated for safety, security, that kind of thing, you know, during closed hours. And parts of the garden do charge admission, since we'll have to do that to keep the lights on. We will have a really strenuous scholarship program that we do not want anybody left out because they can't afford to get in. So.
Do you have what concerns do you have around introducing non-native plants and any possibility of invasives, tendencies of them escaping?
That's a good question.
Yeah, well, lots. You know, it's funny. We of course want to be a very strong proponent of both use of native plants locally and regionally, and specific to the area, but also I think we can be sort of a guide to how plants are introduced that are not local to horticulture. And there's sort of a standard practice that we, for instance, at Sistis use. You know, were they particularly vigorous in a climate that's much like ours? Were they on a road cut? Bad idea. You know, so many things that we can use when accessioning new plants into a public garden that are not local. But I can just say it will be more than rigorous. How about that?
How would you describe the difference or similarity in relationship to the Oregon Garden in Silverton?
I don't think there's much of an overlap. That was built, I think, by the Oregon Association of Nurseries to showcase the products that, again, we export to the East Coast. And so it doesn't. We have very different components. I think we'll be showcasing. So I don't. There's not too much of a comparison.
Do you still have an eBay store? And are there plans to continue, or do you discontinued it?
No, we were able to develop our own store on our website. So that's transition from eBay to, you can go to our website. And in fact, if you want, I can probably put the link in the chat if I can.
Could you? Yeah.
Pull it up. Yeah, sure.
Okay. And then you have folks who are looking for any paid positions and also want to volunteer already. So do you anticipate any paid positions becoming available soon?
Soon?
Or what is your timeline?
Not before tomorrow morning, but
We're being very, very careful about both paid positions and volunteers. And the only reason, well, number one is money, but number two is because we need to have the bandwidth to work with people and to make sure that they're
feeling
being well
useful.
taken care of and feeling useful. And so we're being very careful about taking on too many volunteers. We have a volunteer coordinator who's a volunteer, but she's terrific. And I think that the next person, so I have a small salary and I have an assistant who has a small salary. Neither of us work full time. And the next person that will probably be on the list will be our education director. We'll start paying him. But it's eventually, I mean, the full scale of a botanical garden has a tremendous number of people working for them. So it's it'll be slow but steady. And really it is based on money. We don't ever want to get a payroll going and not be able to afford to pay people. That would be horrendous. So
But we
Mhm.
are, as we have the platforms to sort of support people, we are taking on more volunteers. And so do contact us, because we really want people to be involved somehow, even if it's just spreading the word among other horticultural and
yeah,
botanical societies and things like that. So we're not ready to have volunteer weeders yet, but certainly, other things, do talk to us.
the things we're working on right now are as I mentioned before, we're really starting to take a deep dive into stakeholders. So that's developing relationships with companies and foundations and people and cultures around the city that can support our vision, and we can support what their needs are. So there's the stakeholder DEI, which we're just starting to develop that team, if you will, right now. So if you have any interest in anything like that, or have connections, we would love to hear from you. We also have an education department that will be needing to have some good people working with him as well. So I think that's pretty much where we are at the moment. I think. Can't think of anything. We have nothing really related to horticulture yet because we don't have a garden yet. I
Is
just
there
put the
anything-
link for the shopping into the chat.
And do you think there's any chance of acquiring both properties for their various features and limitations? Are you hoping to acquire both?
We are.
Okay, great. And Irma would like to know if you're considering process-based and site-specific aquatic habitat restoration of natives and wetlands as a component.
Eventually, I think. Do you want to answer that, Sean?
Yeah, I think in a partnership with Clean Water Services, they will be taking on the entire riparian zone on that property, and sort of the wetland component. We would be concentrating on the uplands. The McCormick and Baxter site is interesting, shall we say. Our entire frontage is riprap, and so we're talking about, I guess I'd almost call it storation rather than restoration. But there is a little peninsula out there that is partially submersed, and we have a lot of ideas about what kind of an aquatic or semi-aquatic spot that could be. And I think it's really exciting, but we're still looking at what exactly we could do there. It's an unusual situation in which we would own the underwater portion of that spot, which is unusual in Oregon. So so the answer is yes. How about that?
Great. And that was from Irma. Let's see, Mitch Cruzen would like to know, can you give us just an idea of the style of the garden? If it's something more like the Missouri Botanic Garden with a lot of greenhouses and diverse habitats, or do you want it to be big and open? And would you consider focusing on plants in Mediterranean climates as well as Pacific Northwest?
I think another plant one I can run with that one. We will probably have about 2 or 3 acres under glass, and also have room for meeting spaces and all kinds of event spaces, flex space, and that kind of stuff. And the rest of it right now, and the fun part is going to be designing this thing. And because we've been so immersed in land acquisition and the politics around it, pencil has not gone too much to paper, but it looks like percentage wise, it would be good that it is land mass at least 30 to 40% regional native. Then the rest comparing and contrasting with other Mediterranean climates. And then we'll also have, for instance, a fairly strong Asian component, the flora of Mexico, South America, South Africa, and Australia and New Zealand, the non-Mediterranean parts, just because it's connecting us to the world. One of the aspects also, of course, we have the Japanese garden here and the Chinese garden that represent hundreds of years of art and history and stylized horticulture. the Asian components of the garden will be what one would see if you walk outside the walls of those gardens. So it's immersing oneself in all kinds of habitats from around the world, but a lot of it will really concentrate on us.